Yeah, I love this sunroom. I just hang out in here, read a book all day.
I I spend a lot of time out
Yeah.
here.
I'd like to welcome everybody back to Alabama Care. Today we have Mr. Karl Wade, retired state trooper, and we're going to talk about navigating the disability community after receiving a disability later in life. At this point, I'd like to hand it off. Mr. Wade, would you
Okay.
introduce yourself?
I'm Karl Wade from Prattville, Alabama.
And are you originally from Alabama?
I am. I was born in Florence a number of years ago, and stayed in that area until I was about five, I guess. And then we moved to Birmingham. My dad was transferred or got a job in Birmingham, and I spent 13 years in Birmingham, and made my way back to Florence for a little while.
Yeah. Now, if you could just talk a little bit about, school and family.
Okay.
Did you go to school in Birmingham or?
I did. I'm from a large family. I've got five younger brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest.
Heck yeah, me too.
Uh, and like I said, we moved to Birmingham in 1956, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was 56. And then I was educated in elementary school at the elementary education at a parochial school in Birmingham, and then I went to John Carroll High School for 1 year, and then transferred over to Banks High School in Birmingham for the last 3 years of high school. And then in 1969, when I graduated from high school, my father got transferred to Opelika, and I had enrolled in Florence State University, which is now the University of North Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved back to Florence, and I call Florence home. That's God's country.
Yeah.
and and I stayed there for a very short period of time. I was one semester at Florence State,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's when I joined the Department of Public Safety, Alabama Department of Public Safety, and the state troopers, and remained with them except for a 3-year stint in the United States Army as a military policeman. I stayed with the Alabama Department of Public Safety for almost 42 years.
Yeah.
Went,
I saw a picture there of the service, and I want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So you were a state trooper pretty much, early 20s until retirement.
My whole adult life.
Yeah, I bet you can tell.
18. I was 18 when I joined as a cadet.
Yeah.
Cadet dispatcher, and then when I came back from the military service in 1974, I was promoted to trooper, and then and I was continuous until I retired 12 years ago.
You still keep up with some of your friends?
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
We're a very close knit group.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Today we're going to be talking about, we mentioned navigating the disability world. And there was an event that happened when you were on duty that changed, from that point on, your life. And I'd like you to kind of take us through that day and what that was.
Well, at that time, and it happened, it was Saturday, April the 21st of 1990, and I had already gotten home from working my regular day. I was a sergeant. I was the post commander of the Demopolis post in West Alabama, and there was an individual in Wilcox County, which is just east of Marengo County, that's where Demopolis is, that had shot a couple of deputies.
So there was an active shooter.
There was an active shooter, and he was This was an 88-year-old mentally ill individual.
Yeah.
He was had a complaint had been made. It was in a rural area, very rural area, and he had apparently been out in the front yard waving a shotgun around. The deputies went up to check on him to find out what was going on, and he shot him. One of the deputies was injured, superficially injured. The other deputy was injured pretty bad, and it had almost killed him. At that time, I was also, in addition to being the post commander, I was a team leader on one of the state troopers' tactical units, with the SWAT teams. And we covered West Alabama. My team did, and so my boss called me and said, "Get your team together. Let's go." And so we did, and we responded. And there was, like I said, the man was mentally ill. The man was completely out of touch with reality.
No reasoning there.
None.
Couldn't reason with him.
None. Couldn't talk to him. Nothing that he said. It was just mumbling.
And that's tough because you want to help the individual.
Exactly.
But there's really nothing you can do if they're in that state.
Exactly. And we had negotiators there. We had everything we needed, and it went back and forth as far as the negotiators. We had all the help we needed, and we were just kind of waiting him out. And then it was decided that we would try to use some tear gas.
Yeah.
To get him out of the house, and to where we could take him into custody.
Well, he was going to hurt, others. He'd already shot at 2 police officers. He's going to hurt others and himself.
He was.
So you have to take action there.
Exactly. And we were, so we put tear gas down a chimney. The house was an old house out in the country. Everybody's seen them. It's an old wood frame house up on rock pilings. That was the foundation, with an open space underneath it, and a big gallery on the front, front porch gallery. And but we couldn't use the tear gas by just like throwing it through a door or throwing it through a window, because it's pyrotechnic discharge, which means it burns.
Yeah.
It's fire. And if we'd have used that, we'd have set the house on fire. But,
that reminds me, I saw a documentary of that happened. Was it Waco or Waco? Waco, where they used some type of stuff like that and it caught fire, and it ended up, being a very tragic situation.
Yes.
So I understand not wanting to have that happen.
No, we didn't. Our goal was to get the man out, take him into custody where he couldn't hurt anybody anymore, and get him some help. And, anyway, we dropped the tear gas down a chimney. There was a chimney and a rock fireplace in there, so we didn't. It didn't bring him out right then, but as we were falling back away from the house, we went under a window. I was the last man away from the chimney, and when we went under the window, for some reason I must have had a brain fade.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing I can explain it. I looked in the window, and it was my understanding that he didn't have access to that window, but he did. And when I looked in the window, he shot me.
Yeah.
And that's when everything changed.
So it's like you looked up and through the window, and he's looking back at you.
I saw him right there off to my left, and I ducked. I ducked, but I didn't duck quick enough. And he shot me. He was about 3 feet away, I guess. But and I was, you know, and I made some mistakes, but there were some things that we did right too that night.
Yeah.
I got lucky. It was an old number 8, and for people who hunt birds, that number 8 is birdshot, and it was an old low brass shell that didn't quite go off like a new shell would, and so it wasn't as powerful. A lot of the shot went into the window frame. That was another fortunate thing that happened, and two, I was wearing a gas mask that absorbed some of it.
Yeah.
But he hit me in the face, and a glancing blow from the left to right, and and that's what blinded me. And
Now, was it the actual pellets that hit your eyes
yeah,
that?
it was the pellets.
Yeah. What were you, I mean, I just imagine the shock of getting shot like that at such a close range. Did you fall back?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I remember falling. I remember everything like as if it was in slow motion, and I remember dropping my pistol. I had a pistol in my hand. I remember dropping it. I remember landing on the ground. Now I went out. I was unconscious, and for a period of time, I don't know exactly how long, but then everybody that was there, all of the troopers, all the law enforcement officers too, that were there, they looked and they knew that I was dead.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't think I was dead. They knew I was dead. And then all of a sudden I became conscious. I woke up, and there wasn't any pain other than the burning from the tear gas, and then it just, my senses started coming back to me, and then I realized, you know, that I'd been shot, and that's when I hollered out, and it scared the bejesus out of everybody.
Yeah.
and then things started happening real quick.
Well, it was a good scare. They're like, oh my gosh,
There, you
Mr.
know,
Wade's here.
He's alive.
Yeah.
And so a couple of guys ran out and grabbed me and drug me out of the line of fire. Those two were awarded my department's highest Medal of Honor, you know, Medal for Valor. They got me in a hospital. We had a helicopter there, they loaded me onto our helicopter and flew me to Selma. That was the closest emergency room, major hospital. And then I was stabilized, and then they took me on to Birmingham, to UAB.
Now, when you regained consciousness, was your eyesight lost at that point?
No, it was partially. The shotgun blast, it removed my left eye, completely. 3 pellets went in my right eye and kind of bounced around, and it did damage. It damaged the retina. It did damage to the optic nerve, and it did damage to the lens. But I could still see pretty good.
Yeah. And even today, out of your right eye, you can still see pretty well?
No, nothing.
So over time...
It deteriorated over time. My retina was damaged. 50% of my retina was damaged. And then as the doctors worked on it and tried to save it, they'd tack it down. You know, after several surgeries, they'd tack it down. Scar tissue would form, and then it would tear. And then they'd tack it down, and it got down to where there just wasn't enough left to tack down.
Yeah.
And then plus, like I said, it damaged my optic nerve. Well, my optic nerve started dying after that, and so now I'm 100% blind. In
the beginning, how long did you have use of your right eye? Was it for a few years?
No.
Okay.
It was probably more like a year at the most.
Okay.
So a year of usable vision.
So you had quite a life-changing experience that day.
Yes.
And lost almost all of your eyesight, and over the next year ended up losing full eyesight there. What were some immediate things that you had to change about your routine and your living environment? or what did that process look like in recovery as well?
Well, Of course, after I got out of the hospital, and initially I spent about a week in the hospital, and they did what surgery they could. There was reconstructive surgery on my left side of my face, and then reconstructive surgery of my eye socket, and getting ready for me, preparing me for a prosthetic device or a prosthetic eye, and then the other surgery too on the other side. And I had other issues with, like, I broke my nose. I had to get some reconstructive surgery on my nose and get that straightened out a little bit. But for the most part, they got me up and walking around in that first week. And then after the initial shock of realizing, I'm not ever going to see like I did before. And the doctors told me, they said, you will never be a state trooper ever again. They said I didn't have a center of vision. My right eye didn't, and which it didn't have center of vision. Didn't have much of a retina left. And but my department, and I owe them so much, and the people that were in charge of the department at that time, the director and the assistant director and the higher ups, a few of the higher ups, and they went to bat for me, and they said, look, we've got a place for you. It's in headquarters. Like I said, I was a sergeant then. I was on the lieutenant's promotion list.
Yeah.
The first thing they promoted me to lieutenant.
Oh, really?
Yes, and which was really, I appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going through the emotions that you're talking about. So, after that initial shock, realizing that you're never going to see like you used to, through that process, was there any emotional support where, maybe like a counselor or others that have been through it?
No, I never received any counseling. Now, I tell you what, though, and there's people that a lot of people know, Don Sims, Billy Don Sims, and he was the blind service coordinator for the Department of Rehabilitation Services, and this was back when it was VR services, before it became a department of its own. And after I lost my sight, and then there were some changes in my marriage. I wound up getting divorced a couple of years later, and then I met Don, and Don was blind from birth, but he had gone through some difficulties, marriage, divorce, remarried, and that sort of stuff. And Don really helped me through.
Yeah.
And Don, if you're going to call it counseling, yes, Don gave me counseling, but he was just a friend.
Yeah,
I feel being a friend.
It's so important that that peer support, to have somebody that's been where you're going, or has been through that process, to have somebody to reach out to, bounce ideas off of, and kind of lead you into where the next part is.
Exactly.
You mentioned a few times there, disability and divorce.
Yes.
Do you think that is something that you see higher, divorce you see higher in the disability community?
I don't know, about the total disability community, but I do know that I know a lot of people who have disabilities who are divorced.
Yeah.
And yeah, it puts a strain on a marriage. I know it put a strain on mine, very much so, and I had a couple of small kids too.
Yeah.
But when you see, when I was sighted, I did all the yard work. I cut the grass. I took care of the cars. I
Did all the oil changing and
that all of that was my job.
yeah.
And all the driving. If we went on a trip, I did all the driving unless I was just too tired.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would drive some, but I didn't trust her driving. So
Yeah.
I'm a state trooper. Nobody can drive better than me. but but anyway, there was a role reversal there,
Yeah.
and it was hard for her to accept that, and it was hard for me to accept that too.
Mhm.
And
How
so
did the kids accept it? How old were your kids at that time?
my children were young. My children were 8 and 5,
Okay.
and so it was. I remember my daughter after I initially came home from the hospital the first time. She had mouth ulcers
Yep.
from worry,
Oh, really?
and that's what it was. It was just stress. It was stress ulcers.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, now my son, he didn't have any problem accepting me, but my daughter, she wouldn't come around me.
She just felt a little off there and maybe
Well,
scared.
scared, and she thought that I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I finally figured it out, and I point blank asked her, I said, "Are you afraid that I'm going to die?" And she started crying and said yes.
Mm.
And then and when we ironed that out.
Yeah.
But anyway, they and after that they pretty much accepted it.
I know that was a hard event for you, being the one going through it, but I imagine it's also hard for the kids,
Extremely.
and for the wife and or the significant other there.
Extremely.
But to the kids, you're their hero, and to see anything happen to you is kind of like a kink in their belief system. Your dad, you're invincible, and so it can kind of be a little shock, I think, for them as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned Don Sims. Is Mr. Sims still around?
No, Don died probably 20 years ago from cancer. And
Okay.
That's what got his sight early on. It was retinoblastoma when he was an infant, like 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did a lot of operations on him when he was a baby up at UAB or the Callahan Eye Foundation.
We were just
Hospital,
talking
really.
on the way up here how lucky we are to be close to Birmingham for the medical community.
Absolutely.
It's thriving here in the Southeast. I
Yeah.
feel like if you have something, you come to Birmingham. Get checked out there.
Don's cancer came back. Either 15 or 20 years ago, and he lasted about a month. It came back with a vengeance.
I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the immediate changes that you had to do in your home environment, coming home from the hospital.
Wow.
What were some of those? Did you build anything or have to move things around?
No, I had to make sure that nothing did get moved around. That was one of the things that I had to insist on is, we're not going to move furniture anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to move something that's a little bit, we're not going to move this table over a little bit, because if you do, I'm going to run over it, run into it, trip over it, whatever. And I had to learn, and I learned the hard way that, you open doors all the way, and you close doors all the way. Cabinets, you open them all the way, and you close them all the way, because if you don't, you run into them.
Yeah, those are the little things. I'll hit my knee on a coffee table or something, and those things sting.
Yes.
Get bruised up on my knees.
Center a door frame, and it gets you in the nose, and that hurts.
Now, how long was it after you went into the hospital that you got connected with Don Sims? And how did that connection get made?
It was a couple of years.
Oh, really?
It was after I got divorced. It was after I had gone to rehab. Being a veteran, I was eligible to go to the Southeastern Veterans blind rehab center there at the VA hospital in Birmingham. And I went through like a 12 or a 13-week program there, and it was the basic rehab. I mean, everything basic. It was, and I learned a lot there. The mobility and orientation, daily living skills. It was, it was starting at square one.
Yeah.
And building on it. And then after that, one thing that, and I went through that in a little bit less than a year after I lost my sight.
Okay.
I started in January of '91 and went through March of '91.
There's still a year there where you're doing all this yourself, living and
and with now of course I didn't get divorced until 1992, 2 years later.
Okay.
And so my wife was there, but still, there was stuff that I figured out a lot of it on my own.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was trial and error. And
now, how did the VA thing come up? Were you looking for services, or did somebody mention it?
Yeah, I was looking. I needed rehab, and I already had a rehab counselor. I had gotten hooked up. Initially, I was looking for the library services, and through the Talking Book Library. And before I was an avid reader. Before I lost my sight, I was an avid reader, both fiction and nonfiction. And I still am today. But I was looking for a program I had heard, and I don't remember where I heard about it, but I'd heard about Talking Books. And I got hooked up with that, and then somebody mentioned Department of Rehabilitation Services.
Yeah.
And so I got a counselor, and she kind of helped me out. She helped me a good deal. And then I found out, and the people at work too. My people at work were very supportive, and they did some research. And being, like I said, being a veteran, I was eligible for that up there, and I went, and I learned a lot of mobility, orientation and mobility, using a white cane. Just the daily living skills, basic daily living skills, and tricks, and not necessarily tricks, but ways to do things, different ways to do things.
I've heard that story before where it's like I wasn't receiving services, then I reached out and I found out what's available, went through the courses, and it's such a big difference.
Oh yeah.
Before and after.
It is.
And I think one of the things there too is a lot of times those courses or what you learn, you get connected with people that are already utilizing those services. And
well, and from there, at Blind Rehab with the VA, at that time they didn't have a computer section, and I knew that I was going to need computers. Well, I mean, my department was transitioning to electronics about that time. We were in the early stages of it, but still it was coming. And I'd already been told, you have a job.
You got not only you have a job, but you got promoted.
And I got put in charge of the department's communications section. And I stayed with that for about 7 years, and then transferred over into recruiting, and I spent the next 13 years or so in recruiting.
Yeah.
Which I thoroughly enjoyed.
I love hearing the story where your work and the state troopers and your team there immediately took the stand, like, you have a job here, here's your promotion, we definitely want you on this team.
Yeah.
It gives you so much confidence. And, for me, you have to work. You have to be a productive member of society to have that confidence. And if there were to be something that would happen to me where I felt like I couldn't work again, that would take a lot of that confidence away in who I am. So to have that backing by your team, I think is awesome. I'd like to applaud them back then for making that decision. Yeah. But what types of things, how long was it after the incident that you went back to work?
Uh, well, it about 6 months.
Okay.
I was on injured leave for 6 months, and that gave me time to heal, cope, try to adjust,
Yeah.
somewhat, and before I got back into the main swing of things. I got transferred. Like I said, I was in Demopolis. I got transferred to headquarters here in Montgomery, and that's where I worked. That's the, and then it it I needed that 6 months. I
Yeah.
did. That was not only physically healing, but emotionally healing too. Um, the um, the job that I had with the department was, I knew I needed a computer, and I needed speech software, and I didn't have any training in that, and the VA didn't offer it. They didn't have a computer section at that time. They've got a fantastic computer section now, but at that time they didn't. It was just in its infant stage.
Yeah.
And so one day there was one of the instructors, and two of the instructors and myself drove over to Talladega to the Institute for the Deaf and Blind, and talked with the people that ran the Gentry School there. And the Gentry School is adult education. And they had a pretty good computer section then, and it was growing. And so after I got out of rehab, the Veterans Hospital rehab, I went to Institute for the Deaf and Blind,
AIDB.
AIDB,
Yep.
and the Gentry School there, and I stayed there for, gosh, at least a month and a half.
Was that, you mean you were there 24 hours or you would travel?
Oh yeah, no, I was there 24 hours, and my wife would come up and pick me up on the weekends, and yeah, I stayed in the dormitory.
Now, was that primarily focused, like you said, on the computer learning? And
100% computers, and I had zero computer skills.
well, they were so new back then. I mean,
Yes,
everybody was just starting to get into them.
and but they had a good school up there, and still do. Still have a tremendous program at the Gentry School.
We're doing a broadcast with them next month.
Good.
So we're going to highlight some of the stuff that AIDB and the Presbyterian Home for Children are doing together.
Yeah, yeah, they're connected up there. And, but I can't say enough good things about both the VA blind rehab program and AIDB's program. They're fantastic.
So you went and you got a lot of this computer skills training, AIDB.
Yep.
You're ready to go back to work. What types of changes did you have to notify the department that you needed?
Well, mainly it was just the equipment that I had. I had to have, of course, the specialized equipment, a scanner to read printed material, and the software, and then the speech software on the computer to where I could use it in my job. And they were very accommodating. The director back then said, "I don't care what it costs.
Yeah.
Get it." And I was just, and again, they were, I couldn't ask for a better group of people and a better employer.
Yeah. They seem great. They seem like friends as you're talking about it now.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
They were then, and they still are.
Now, so you mentioned that you had so you have the equipment, you're back at work. Was there anything that popped up when you were at work that you were like, actually, we need to change this a little bit as well?
Well,
what I'm trying to hint at is like, okay, so let's say that somebody is getting adaptive equipment and is going back into the job. Sometimes they might feel a little hesitant to reach back out to services or to their employer and say, hey, this is great, but it would really help if we did this as well.
that I didn't have any problem with that. I can see where that would, because there are people, and I've seen it over the last 30 plus years of being in the disabled community, that employers are resistant. Employers are about the bottom line, and adaptive technology and all of that, it costs money, and it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, we were talking.
They're expensive.
We were talking about there is a girl that does broadcasts on Alabama Care, McCartney Hagar, and she was pointing out that for wheelchair and power chair users, it's really tough to get on airplanes.
Yeah.
And there's something like in 2019, 30 wheelchairs a day were being lost or damaged. And these are their forms of getting around, their transportation there.
Their legs.
And she was saying, sometimes these chairs are $30,000.
Exactly.
And so it can be very expensive. And some of the
extremely.
some of the assistive technology and communication can sometimes $30,000.
Yes.
And so it is a big investment by the employer.
It is, and unfortunately, there are employers out there, who miss the opportunity to employ a good employee simply because they've got a disability. And I think, and I've said it all along, when I was with the department, and no matter how well I was treated, and no matter how much friends and how many friends I had there, I had to prove myself. And I had to prove myself just about, I'm not going to say every day, but I had to continually prove myself, because people who are not disabled, people who are not blind, they will look at a task, whatever, and say, well, I just don't see how Karl could do that. I don't see how I could do it if I didn't have my sight. So obviously, if I can't see how to do it, then Karl can't do it. Without coming and saying, hey, can you do this?
It's like day in and day out having to prove yourself.
You have to prove yourself every day. And if I went through it, I know other people out there who are seeking employment or in a workplace environment are having to prove themselves. The same. I mean, human nature doesn't change, I don't think, unless you make it, unless you force it, and you got to prove it to them. I can do that. Yeah, sure I can do that.
I think your point of a lot of times employers are missing out on great employees.
They certainly are.
Just because for some reason they're put off by whatever that disability may be. It just looks a little different for them. And they're like, I've never navigated this before. And they miss out, like you said, on a great teammate.
And every person with a disability that I know of that is employed, they are a better employee. They're the best employee that employer has. Yeah. Because they are out there. They know that they've got to be better. They've got to do better. They've got to prove themselves to be better in order to keep their job. That
reminds me of when I was in high school. I was working for my father, and he was a veterinarian, and it was I think he employed maybe 50 people at the time, but it was always like, oh, you work for your dad, it must be so easy. And it was like, no, I have to go in every day, and in my position, I have to be the hardest worker. Because if I'm not, people are going to say, oh, he's not doing it, we can slack off as well. So it was every day you have to be there doing the best you can, going the extra mile.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing if you have a disability.
What would you say to somebody in the disability community that is wanting to work but is not getting hired?
Don't give up. It takes persistence, and it takes perseverance. Don't give up. Keep plugging away. And it'll come through. I was lucky. I mean, I really was, because I had people that didn't want to throw me away. As a matter of fact, the director back then, he looked at me and he said, "We've got a place for you." He said, "Your eyes don't work, but there's nothing wrong with your brain." Yeah. Of course, he didn't really know me that well, but
Well, I'm sure
But
the other team members probably spoke up on your behalf, like, we can't let
they
Mr.
did.
Wade go.
They did, and there were other people. But anyway, that was a joke, by the way.
Yeah.
But and that's he said, there's nothing wrong with your brain. Yeah, and we can make the adjustments. There was resistance at other from other levels.
Really?
There was some resistance.
What kind of resistance?
They were afraid that a precedent was being set, and accommodations had to be made to keep me as a state trooper rather than a civilian employee. And the state police retirement in Alabama is better than just regular state employees.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stay in that.
For sure.
And so they had to approach Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission and get me a waiver on the requirement that every law enforcement officer has a driver's license. I told them I could still drive, I just couldn't drive real good.
Yeah, I'll go wherever you want me to
That's
go.
right, I'll drive. I might not make it very far, but I. And then second, also there's a requirement that every law enforcement officer in Alabama must qualify with a handgun. And
Same thing. I can shoot.
that's it. I couldn't get anybody to go to the range with me though. But anyway, so they had to, and there were people in the department that, and I know, and their intentions were good. They were looking out for the the department's good long term. And they were afraid that if they let me stay, then the next person that comes up that might have some type of disability that couldn't be accommodated, or that they didn't think they could accommodate, which could. But,
Yeah.
then they would be forced to keep them. And there was some resistance, but the like I said, the director, who is the boss, they're the top person in the department.
Buck stops there.
Yeah, said nope. This is something that it's the right thing to do, and we're gonna keep him.
Now, the pushback, did that happen more at the beginning and kind of ease up as everybody saw that you were doing a great job?
To a degree.
Yeah.
And there was still, after several years now later on, after, I spent another 21 years with the department.
Yeah, I mean, this is a
blind.
success story, and I think
Yes.
more people need to hear this, because sometimes there may be somebody that has a disability a little bit later in life, and they feel like they can never go back to work and have those challenges. But this is a
can go
great
back.
success story.
But anyway, later on, I mean, as I continued in my career and just continued to prove that, yeah, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. Then the resistance wasn't all that strong. I mean, real strong. It wasn't insurmountable. But I always had the backing of the directors,
The people in charge.
the ones at the top.
Yep.
And of course they changed every 3 or 4 years. With administrations, it's a political appointment. But
No.
anyway, I always had that, and it made the department look good. I mean, look at what they're doing for people with disabilities. So,
Now, you said you had that initial job for 7 years.
yes,
And then you transitioned into a new job.
yes.
What was the new job? You said
It
communications.
was, well,
Or
the first position that I had at headquarters was in communications, and it worked fairly good. I wasn't real comfortable in that job, but that's what they had for me. And then later on, I got transferred into
recruitment.
recruiting, and that to me, I love talking to people,
Yeah.
and I love talking about the Alabama Department of Public Safety and being an Alabama State Trooper. And that's all that it was. That's what recruiting is.
So would you go to school, like high schools, and speak on that, or?
Job fairs and that sort of stuff in and around this area. We have, or we, it's hard for me. I've been retired for over 10 years, but I still say we.
Heck yeah.
Because I still
You've earned that right.
I still feel a part of it. But the department has it's called a safety education, public information and safety education unit. And we've got field officers all over the state. And they're the ones, and they worked with me. They didn't work for me, but we worked together. They were in a different unit, but they would attend the job fairs, the high schools that had career days and that sort of stuff in their local areas.
Okay.
And then I handled job fairs, careers. I never went to any of the schools, but mainly it was the job fairs that they'd have there in Montgomery that I attended, that I took care of.
And when you're going to these places and continuing to work, what does that transportation look like for you?
Well, when I was working, I would go with the local public information officer. There'd be two of us work the job fair.
Okay.
And so I'd ride with him or her. And I didn't have to, I didn't travel outside of Montgomery.
Gotcha.
And so, but it was all department. I mean, the department provided the transportation on job-related events.
What about getting to and from work?
That was a different story. I was pretty much on my own. And I would scramble around. There were, initially, I rode to work with my boss. And he lived just a few blocks from here, from my house. And so I would ride with him, and then we'd line up. I lined up, but as those people changed jobs and changed positions in the department, moved on, retired, then I got to scrambling around, and the employees, the civilian employees, I wound up riding to work mainly with the civilian employees that live here in and around Prattville, and of course I paid them.
Yeah,
I paid for it, and but I was always able to get to work. I was able to get to work on time most of the time.
Well, I think that's a big thing, is transportation in the disability community. We talked a little bit about that before going live, but I think a lot of that does fall back on the shoulders of the individual, like you said. Asking friends, family for a little bit of help, and fortunate enough that you're able to compensate them and for gas and pickup, stuff like that. But not everybody has that ability.
No, they don't.
A little bit more rural areas where maybe they don't have close by friends or relatives or people they work with that can kind of chip in. And they're looking for employment, so they might not have the means to compensate somebody for a ride.
That's right.
And it's a cycle.
It is. It's a cycle, and it's transportation. As long as I've been in the disability community, the disabled community, and as long as I've been involved in advocating for people with disabilities, that is right up there at number one or number two, is transportation. Transportation. If you can't get a ride to the job interview, you can't get employed.
Yeah.
And if you can't get a ride to the doctor's appointment, you don't go, because especially in rural Alabama, because with the lack of broadband, you can't do the
virtual stuff.
The virtual stuff, exactly. The telemedicine,
telehealth, yeah.
And even if you can, if you don't have the financial wherewithal to 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 get transportation, you probably don't have the financial wherewithal to have a computer
Yeah.
to telecommunicate with the driver, with the doctor.
Yep. I think
So
there are so many cases where that's happening at a local level, and maybe the family or the individual doesn't even try to receive services from the state, and the state doesn't know that those individuals need services.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Now, I tell people that if if they complain about that needing transportation, ask your friends.
Yeah.
That's what friends are for.
You'll find your friends pretty quick.
You will. You'll find your good friends real quick.
Yeah.
And those that there are those that say they'll say, yeah, oh yeah, I'll help you out anytime I can, but they don't. Then they're not really your good friends. And the others, yeah, we can make accommodations. I know here in Autauga County, we've got transportation issues. I use taxi cab around town, and I'm able to pay the taxi driver. But for a year and a half, we didn't have a taxi.
What did you do during that time?
I relied on friends, or I had there's a young woman here in town that helps me. She and I go grocery shopping together. She takes me grocery shopping. I pay her, and she has recently retired from the state, and and she is available to take me to doctor's appointments or any other kind of appointments that I might have. Most of the time. Sometimes she's not, and I just have to make adjustments.
Now, do you currently receive services from like ADRS?
Off and on.
Tell me about that and what kind of services.
Mainly, it's when I get stuck with my computer and can't figure out what's going on. Then it's not really ADRS. It's the AIDB Regional Center in Montgomery, and there's a really good AT guy down there that I call him all the time.
Okay.
and I'm 70 years old, so I'm not. I didn't grow up in the electronic.
Well, I noticed that
era.
I'm the oldest of 5, and my younger siblings are way more tech savvy than I am.
Yeah.
I'll hand my phone to them and go, "Okay, can you help me?"
I hand mine to my grandsons.
Yeah.
I've got a 10-year-old grandson that's the quickest thing that there ever is.
We were talking on the way up here.
Yeah.
You hand like a 4-year-old an iPad, and they're running that thing in 10 minutes.
Exactly. And me, I don't even know what an iPad looks like. but yeah, my grandchildren, they're just whizzes at it, and they say, well, see, Grandpa, it's just like this, and zip, 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 and it's done. Well, now wait a minute, what you do?
Take me back through that again.
Yeah, but anyway, Colin, the guy at AIDB Regional, and they've got regional centers all over Alabama. I think they're fixing to open up a couple more where there'll be like 13 or maybe even 15.
Yeah.
All over the state, and they will help. And rehab, I don't have with rehab. I don't have an open case, but I don't need it. And
but it's there if you did need it.
It's there if I do need it. And I have been very, very involved with rehab. Rehab gave me so much, and they did so much for me. They came in and they helped me set up my office. When I first went back to work with my counselor, they
go into your work environment?
They came into my work environment. They came here to my house and helped me set a few things up. I didn't need a whole lot, but they would have set up anything, helped me.
Home modifications if you needed it?
If I needed home modifications, as far as, not like structural, but just tips, with a rehab teacher and the lessons and a little bit of equipment too. rehab helped me with a computer at work one time too.
Yeah.
So they purchased it for me, and it was because rehab is all about employment.
Yes.
And so I have done my dead level best to give back to rehab and in every way that I can. And I right now I'm on a little hiatus with it, but I've been serving. I served a number of years on the statewide rehab council. As a matter of fact, I rotated off earlier last year off of it, and I had been the chair of the council for about 5 years.
And I know you said earlier that you served on the Independent Living Council with Lorenzo Brown.
I did. I served there. I rotated off of that. I served 6 years on that and rotated off. I also serve on the Governor's Office on Disabilities.
With Dr. Graham Sisson.
With Dr. Graham Sisson. I serve on his advisory council, as well as I serve on the Montgomery area Voc Rehab Council. And Graham, Dr. Sisson, he's over that too. But
I love to see that giving back.
I firmly believe in that, and
Yeah.
they've done so much for me, and there's nothing I can't do enough to pay them back fully, and so I'm going to do it as much as I can.
I think one of the great things you mentioned about rehab services is you mentioned that they help pay for a computer there, and so for individuals that are looking to get hired, we have this internet, that's bustling right now. A lot of jobs are starting to go online, and I think that gives great employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities to work from home. And if you're not quite sure how to do that, you need to get your case opened with rehab services or whatever organization that is, and they'll help you. They'll teach you how to use this equipment. They may even help with the cost of the equipment.
They will.
They're your buddies there. So definitely utilize those services. Now, you are on a number of advisory councils and involved in the discussion there. We were just talking about transportation being a major issue. Is there any chatter on those organizations about what a possible solution could be?
No one, yes, there's a lot of talk about it. There has been for, the
20
last
years.
32 years, I know, because that's been an issue for the last 32 years for me. But there's, as far as public transportation, it's going to take a major overhaul of the structure in order to provide public transportation. We were talking about there's public transportation in Birmingham, and there's public transportation in Montgomery. I think there's public transportation in Huntsville, Mobile too, maybe, but that's it. The rest of there may be in some counties may have, like here, they've got a rural transportation bus. Or several of them. I think there's 5 of them here in Autauga County, but it's not on demand.
Yeah.
And they make a route, and they pick up. It's 9-passenger, 11-passenger vans.
Could look like a church van kind of thing.
Kind of like a church van. And then if I want to go get a haircut, first off I've got to make a reservation the day before. It's not on demand. I can't call them up and say, "Hey, come get me now." And then they'll make the loop, pick up all those other folks, drop me off at the barbershop. And then go drop the other folks off, or I might be the last one that they drop off. But still, I got to wait until the bus comes back around.
A haircut's like a 3-hour event.
Exactly. And you go. It takes 3 hours to get a 20-minute haircut.
Makes you want to have somebody come in the home and do that.
There you go, or just buzz it all off. But anyway, and that's one of the problems, and it's also a problem with people who are not in the disabled community, because they look at it, and especially the politicians, they look at it and say, well, why do you need public transportation? We've got the rural transportation buses that go around and pick folks up.
Yep.
Well, they don't ride the rural transportation buses.
Yeah, you got to put yourself in their position.
That's it.
To learn it.
That's it.
You go ahead and ride that rural bus for a week, and then you come back and tell me it's sufficient.
And I'm not talking bad about the rural transportation.
Mm-hmm.
It does. It provides service, a much needed service to a lot of people. But you need something that's a little more on demand.
Mm-hmm. More personalized, individualized.
That's a better way to put it, personalized.
I've heard the same thing with Birmingham. Very grateful that the service is there, but it needs to be improved.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to hear that. I'm still new in the community, but the transportation and employment are continually being brought up. And one of our goals here at Alabama Care is to have a big day down in Montgomery as a legislative day when the legislators are in session. And I think it's important to kind of have a singular voice there that they can come in contact with and kind of take home. And I'm trying to gauge the community of what that might be. Is it transportation, employment? So we always like to ask, how could that, what are your thoughts on making that better? So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. I wish I had the answer.
Me too.
I really wish I had the answer. I wish, it's always, every time there's a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan that's developed at rehab or any of the other advocacy departments, transportation and employment are right up there at top, number 1 and number 2.
Yep.
Or one of them's always 1 or 2. And and so far there's not been anything substantial, solid, that anybody, either the people in the disabled community or others, have come up with.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a quick fix.
No.
I think it's better than it probably was, and it'll continue to try and get there. But
and another thing too, I think, and it goes back to, I said it before, bottom line, it's going to take a lot of money to get a public transportation system, statewide public transportation system, up and running. And
I've heard that kind of one of the challenges and obstacles there are that each county or each area, smaller area within Alabama, gets to make those decisions about their public transportation. So you'd have to have every one of those individual, geographic locations say yes. And it's tough to get, whether that's 15 or 25 yeses from different parts of the country, or the state. I would like to talk a little bit about, you currently have a case manager, someone that you're direct contact with when you're going to AIDB or through ADRS, or did you in the past?
I did in the past.
I think,
certainly did,
but
not anymore.
Was that person the same person for a number of years, or did you kind of get new ones?
For the most part, it was the same person.
Okay.
And and it would change if I needed. It would change as people left the business. My first one, she resigned and she got married and moved off.
Nothing you can do about that.
Not much I can do about that.
God bless you. Have a great life. Thank you for everything.
It. But all of them that I have yet to, when I was using a case manager and that sort of stuff, I never had any. I never had a bad one.
Okay.
Let me put it that way.
That's what I was going to follow up with. What is that relationship like with that case
Some
manager?
were better than others, and most of the time, what I needed after the initial stuff, after the initial training and help that I needed, I always like to figure out things on my own. So I didn't call on them unless I really needed something. But the ones that I had, one of them, she was there. There's not that many case managers, in the state, and around here there was one or two, and they were all good, and they would, when I needed them, they were there. When I didn't need them, I wouldn't bother them.
Yeah.
And I haven't had an active case in a long time.
I think it's really important. I will speak with individuals and families and I say, we need things to change for very individualized scenarios. And I always say, well, how is your relationship with your case manager? Because they're kind of the front door to these services that are provided from the state and these organizations. You have to have a good relationship with your case manager. And you need to foster that. And I also like how you say you liked figuring things out on your own. I think you should have kind of a general plan. You may not know everything that's out there and available for services, but if you have a general plan of where you want to go, that will help the case manager out. You don't want to just go to your case manager and say, I don't like what's happening. They're going to want to say, okay, you want something different. Where do you want to go there? It's like, if you're just complaining without a solution, you're just complaining. That's it. You got to have a solution there, and you may not know all of the possibilities there, but you need to go to your case manager with somewhat of a plan, and they are a lot more likely to help you get that through.
When I was on the SRC, the Statewide Rehab Council, we always saw the evaluations, the consumer satisfaction evaluations that are done every year. For the Department of Rehabilitation Services, for their case managers, for their and satisfaction with the case manager or the instructor, the teacher, the rehab teacher. Well, they call them counselors now; they're not rehab teachers. But anyway, the percentage has for the last number of years has always been pretty high up there in the 90 percentile.
That speaks a lot to the organizations and the case managers.
It does.
And the hiring process there. We have a very great relationship, my aunt does, and so do I, with her case manager. There was something this past year where there was a change in one of the waivers that she was receiving. They were doing away with that waiver, and we had to try and figure out another waiver that would replace that. And so I'll give a shout out to Dawn Coates, who is my aunt's case manager. She really stepped up and helped us through that process. So, but if people are really struggling, I always say first person to contact is your case manager. Have a great relationship with them. Have a plan when you go into them. Don't waste any time.
Yeah.
And do that. We're kind of winding down here. I'd like to ask just a couple questions. What does disability advocacy mean to you?
To me, it's giving back. I'm very, very fortunate. I tell everybody that I'm blind, I'm visually impaired, and I'm very, very fortunate because I was supposed to be dead. And if you're supposed to be dead, blind really isn't all that bad. And there are so many people that are. I've seen so many people just after a disability, after they become disabled, whether it's blindness through old age or a catastrophic event like mine was, they go home and they sit down. They give up. And that's the wrong thing to do. And that's, to me, what saved me was, and again, Don Sims helped me a lot because he got me involved. He really did get me involved. And people in the blind community, just about everybody knows the name. A lot of folks are still around that knew him personally. But Don was an advocate. He was a go-getter. He pushed people. And he got me involved in so many things. Dealing with advocacy, and then it finally dawned on me, well, I've gotten so much from rehab, from VR, from this, that, and the other, that I need to give it back, and that's the reason I advocate, and I like helping people, and advocacy for me is helping other people.
Well, I think on behalf of the community, we want to say thank you for giving back and doing that. Reminds me of a story of when I was in high school. I had a little family event that went on, and I was going down the wrong road, and I had a teacher that kind of stepped in and took me under her wing. I was in ninth grade. She got me involved in the school, started doing class officer stuff, and so I think it's really important that you surround yourself with the right people, and getting involved can change your life.
Okay.
They say you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most, so you have to make sure who's on your circle is going to be good for you. So I'd like to thank Don Sims back then for getting in contact with you.
Yeah, me too. I miss Don. I really do. I miss him.
What is something that you're looking forward to this next year, next 12 months?
Oh, well, just continuing. I am, of course, I do civic work here too in the community. I'm very much I'm involved in the local Lions Club, and we are a service organization, and so just being involved more with that, or continuing that. It's I've got a good life. I really do, and looking forward to COVID being over. And,
Oh, I tell you what,
and getting more, being able to get back fully involved.
yeah, we appreciate you doing this broadcast today in person, because I always like being in person to do these, and I think sometimes the ones that we do virtual, well, I know I don't like them as much, so I'm ready for COVID to be. I think everybody is.
I think we all are.
You mentioned that you were an avid book reader
Yes.
before the tragic incident. Are you still listening to audiobooks?
Yes.
What's a good audiobook that you've listened to recently?
Well, I'm rereading Tom Clancy's The Patriot Games right now,
Okay.
and am thoroughly enjoying it. I like being a retired law enforcement officer and former military and everything. I like detective mysteries. I like military, action, that sort of thing, and there's enough out there. There are so many titles in the NLS collection that I don't believe I'll ever run out. I won't read them all. I know.
Well, Tom Clancy's got to be right up your alley. I think Patriot Games they actually made into a movie.
They did.
I don't know if I've ever seen it, but when you're going through that, have you ever read or listened to Hunt for October?
Yes, I read that. I didn't get to see the movie, but I haven't seen the movie, but I did. I read the book. That was his first. And
Was it?
yes, and just other. I've started rereading some of the stuff that I read. I read Patriot Games in book form, using my eyes, and now, 30 some odd years later, I'm reading it using my ears.
Do you notice in the audiobooks that the orator, or who would be what's the name of the person that reads it out loud? Is that an orator there? Or a transcriber?
No, it's the collection. They've got professional readers.
Do you find that you would like to follow one of the readers more than, like, if you find a good reader and you really connect with their voice, you're more likely to go to books that they've transcribed?
Oh yeah, if I like the subject matter.
Yeah.
But I've got favorite narrators, and then there's some that, even though I'd love to read the book, the book would maybe interest me, the narrator isn't worth a darn.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm not going to put up with that.
There's sometimes
10 or 12 hours of this.
I don't want to hear her talking like that for 12 hours.
That's it. And so, yeah, not everybody's perfect.
Yeah. And the last question here is there anything that we haven't talked about that an individual with a disability or their family member could benefit from hearing?
Nothing other than advice to people, both people with disabilities and family members and friends who are around, is use patience. especially if the disability is caused by a catastrophic event, or comes on in older, later in life. Things are not going to change overnight. You're not going to learn everything overnight, and a lot of the learning curve is a lot steeper the older you get. And so the people that are around a person with disability, say your parents or something like that, patience, use patience, and also the person with disability, use patience, because they're learning too. The people that are around you, they're learning as well how to deal and how to adapt to your disability.
And as you get older, everybody at one point in their life will have a disability.
They do.
The body just breaks down. It starts to, as you get older, you lose some of your ability.
Dr. Graham Sisson has he's got a label that he puts on everybody. And it's anybody who doesn't have a disability is a TAB.
A tab?
A TAB, T-A-B, temporarily able-bodied. Because at some point, if you live long enough, you're going to have a disability.
Yeah.
Your eyesight is going to go bad. You're going to have to start wearing glasses. Your hearing is going to go bad. You'll have to start wearing hearing aids, or if you can wear them. Arthritis sets in, and you're going to have mobility issues. So everybody is a TAB. You're temporarily able-bodied.
It's true.
So keep that in mind.
I would a follow-up question to the seeing and hearing. I've heard that sometimes if one of the senses is dulled or numb, that other senses get heightened. Did you notice any of that?
That's a myth.
Okay.
That what that is my sense of hearing didn't get better when I lost my sight. My sense of hearing didn't get better. My sense of smell didn't get better. My sense of taste didn't get any better. I started paying more attention to it.
Yeah.
And instead of identifying something with my eyes, I identify it with my ears. And I hear and figure out what it is. But no, your senses. I mean, your senses are just that. Matter of fact, my sense of hearing is worse because I have to wear hearing aids now where I didn't used to be.
Yeah.
But it's just you pay more attention to them. Yeah. And for example, if you hear a noise over there, well, the first thing you do is you turn your head and you look over there and you identify it with your eyes. Well, if your vision is gone, then you identify it with your hearing, or another, if it's an old wet dog, then you know what.
Stinky old wet dog.
You smell it.
Well, Mr. Wade, I really appreciate you spending time with us today and sharing your story and reaching individuals and family members. So
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for all of the work you're doing and giving back. And I'm going to take that patience. Have patience. I'm going to take that to heart. My grandmother's nearing 91, and sometimes I have to be a little bit more patient. So that's a good reminder for myself today.
You have to.
Mr. Wade, thank you again.
Thank you.
And Clifton will go ahead and take us offline. And we'll just wait to hear from him that we are no longer live. It's always one of my worst fears that I say